Alright guys, welcome to another video, and in this tutorial I want to talk to you guys about the very basics of user interaction, how to handle a simple event, and of course we know that there's a lot of different ways that the user can indeed interact with your screen. They can just tap, they can swipe their finger across. If there's a button, then they can just hold down their finger. They can, make a figure eight, make some weird things, whatever. But for this example, we're just going to keep things really simple. I'm going to show you guys how to create just a single view, and it's going to have a button on it. And whenever they tap that button, it's just going to change some text on the screen. So it'll teach you guys the basics, and then later on, we'll learn about some more advanced stuff like multi-touch and some really cool stuff like that. But for now, what I did is I just created a blank project, and it just has a single view. It's just going to have one screen, nothing fancy. So pretty much forget about what you did in the last couple tutorials, start brand new, and once you're here, go to this file right here, viewcontroller.swift. So before we start building the interface, I want to talk you guys through exactly what this file is. So before, when I was just giving you guys a real quick overview of Xcode, I said that this is pretty much the brains behind your view, your screen. So this class right here, it's pretty much linked up to your main view right now. And what it's responsible for, like I said, it's kind of the brains of your program, the brains behind your app. It's a class that can control the view. So what can we do in here? Well, we can do some pretty cool stuff like, well, in this tutorial, you probably could have guessed, handle user interaction. For example, whenever they tap a button, we can write a method in here, and that method can just make some code happen. And we're just going to write change some text on the screen, but eventually, your guys' methods are going to be a little more complex than that. So since we don't really need this default code, again, make sure that you keep your class, but delete all of these methods that they gave us by default, since really don't need those for that tutorial. And also get rid of these comments. It's just a pain in the butt looking at those. So right now we just have an empty class, an empty view controller. And by the way, this name of the class right there, view controller, it's a pretty appropriate name because what's it do? Well, it controls your view. Pretty sweet. And that's another thing I probably should point out. Whenever you just click one of these file names and you just click it one time, then it changes it to the main area. But if you ever want to open up a new window, then you can actually double click it and you can have a separate window as well. So again, double clicking opens up in a new window. So there you go, little bonus tip. All right, so now what I want you guys to do is click on this file right here, main storyboard, and make sure that your interface is the one you're looking at. And might as well get this out of the way. Just uncheck this use size classes, and we'll disable size classes. So we'll keep things simple since, designing the interface isn't really the topic of this tutorial. We will just cheat and use that really simple iPhone. So again, like I said, all this is going to do is it's going to be a real simple example. We're going to put a button on here and also some text right there, and whenever you click the button, it's going to change the text. So first, let's add that button. So if you go in the bottom right and you just type in but, then we can just drag a generic button, and we might as well stick it right in the dead center. Pretty cool. And actually, let me go ahead and double click this, and I'll change it to bacon. And you know what? I think I'm going to drag this up a little bit because I'll show you guys something else. All right, so now we have a button on there, not doing anything yet. It says bacon, pretty sweet. So now what I want you guys to do is this. Now, there are a couple different ways that we can split the screen up, but before we do that, since I'm limited on, whenever I'm making tutorials, I'm going to click this little button right here, and that's going to hide my file navigator for right now. So I'm going to hide that, and the reason I want to do that is because, remember, I said that that file that we looked at the beginning of the tutorial was responsible for controlling this view. It was the brains behind this screen right here. So if I go up here to view, then from here I can go to easy Haas, assistant editor, and show assistant editor. Now what this does is it actually takes the brain, that view controller, and it splits it up between your view. So this is pretty cool because you're like, all right, this makes a lot more sense. I'm looking at my design and I'm also looking at the brain behind it. Now, another quick kind of handy way to get here is by clicking this Venn diagram little button right there. So again, this is the standard editor. Allows you to look at one file at a time. And this is the assistant editor. A cool little split screen view. So now that we got that out of the way, what I want you guys to do now is this. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to create a method that whenever you click this button, it's going to call a little bit of code. Now, this method is a special method called an action. So remember, an action is a method that gets called whenever the user interacts with something on the screen. In this example, clicks a button. All right, so how do we create that action method? You probably got to go here. And all right, what's the syntax for it? It's probably real confusing and I have to remember this. Well, check this out. This is one of the things I love about Xcode and iOS development. If you select this button, whenever you're in this view, and you hold down Control on the keyboard, so I'm holding down Control right now, so click and drag, and you're gonna see a blue line. Now, if you drag it over to here, right inside your view controller, and let go, and there we go. So let go. What it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, so you obviously want to create some kind of action, some kind of link or connection between this button and the brains. So what kind of connection are you trying to make? Well, I'll talk to you guys about outlets in like 2 seconds, but for right now, we're going to choose action because remember I said an action is the method that gets called whenever a user interacts with something on the screen. So whenever the user performs an action, just think of it like that, we're going to call some method. Simple enough. All right, so what method do we want to call? Well, we didn't create one yet, so we have to give it a name. I would just name it, I don't know, like button pressed. So whenever they click that button, it's going to call button pressed. Now for the type, we're going to set this to UI button since it is a button. Now the event we can leave as default touch up inside. Believe it or not, there are different ways that the user can interact with the button. They can swipe across it. They can just tap it. And the tap is touch up inside. I know it's kind of a weird name, but ooh, my oh my. Tasted like chili kind of. Not bad, not bad. And another thing that they can do is they can tap and hold down on it, like kind of holding something in. So anyways, I just want to, if you guys are like, why would a button have different events? That's why. So we'll just leave that at touch up inside, which just means the default user clicking it, tapping on it, and we're going to hit connect. Now, whenever we do this, it sets up that default action. So now, whenever the user clicks this, it's going to call this method. And if we run this, it's going to work fine. We don't have any errors or warnings or anything. However, it's not going to do anything because it just built a blank method for us without any code inside. So eventually we're going to have to add some code inside there, obviously. So before I do that, I want to show you guys one other thing because I don't really want to skip over it. If you go over to your items and you drag another button on your interface, and let me just drag it a little below, double click this, and I'm going to name this one tuna. So now we have this button, bacon, and we already know that this is linked up. So whenever they click it, it calls this method button pressed. Now, if we want to link up this button to an action method, well, we can go ahead and create a brand new one, and that'll work. But if we want to do something like this, select this item, the tuna button, hold down Control, and drag to button pressed. What we can do is we can connect this button to this action as well. So now we can click bacon or tuna, and it calls this method. So I just want to show you guys that you can indeed hook up multiple buttons or actions to the same method. So typically, of course, you're going to want to use different methods, but for this example, it'll be fine.